The last live cast I did, the topic was marketing innovation, which was also very interesting. And I had the good fortune of working with John Osman from Jack Link's Protein Snacks. So one simple definition of purpose-driven marketing is that it's a type of marketing where the brand connects with its audience on causes they both believe in. And the reason that's important is over 60% of consumers think it's important that brands share their same values. And since 1997, Coinstar has offered the ability to donate to charities off of our kiosk. So any of you that have poured your coins into one of our kiosks, you could donate to charities such as American Red Cross, the NAACP, Feeding America, the United Way, several other charities. And since 1997, we've helped raise over $125 million. All right, I am very honored to introduce two outstanding guests from Mondelēz. And these are two senior brand managers, Lauren Flanigan and Olympia Portale. And they work on my absolute favorite cookie, OREO, double stuff and birthday cake, please, if you happen to have any. But I would love to let Lauren and Olympia just tell us a little bit about themselves and how they got to where they are with Mondelēz.
Great, so I can jump in. I'm Lauren Flanigan. Thank you, Bob, for the introduction and for moderating today's conversation. Super excited to chat purpose, and especially alongside Olympia, who I have the world of respect for as a friend and an amazing colleague as well. So as you mentioned, I'm Senior Brand Manager of OREO. I've actually been with Mondelēz, the parent company of OREO, for about 6 years, working on a variety of different brands, including Trident Gum, Sour Patch Kids, Belvita, and a number of others. And I have to say I may be a little biased, but OREO is also my favorite. I definitely just had one with lunch a couple of minutes ago. So really happy to be working on the brand and to be here with you guys today to chat purpose.
Great, thank you. And Olympia?
Hi, everyone. I'm Olympia Portale. I'm also a Senior Brand Manager on OREO at Mondelēz. So I've worked in different areas of integrated marketing, brand management in the space for about 10 plus years. And with Lauren, I'm currently working on OREO. I've been at Mondelēz for about 5 years, working on different brands in the space, but with, I guess for the last 5 years, no, maybe it's 3 years I've been on OREO. But everything from integrated media strategy, comms planning, purpose-driven marketing, brand partnerships, commercial marketing, I have experience in.
Great, great. So two very rich backgrounds, and I look forward to our conversation today. So with that, I will start with the first question, which is, Mondelēz is a powerful global company. I think you sell your products in over 150 different countries. Maybe more. And OREO is one of the most beloved brands in the world. Can you tell me about how you approach purpose-driven marketing?
Yeah, so I can kick us off, and Olympia, feel free to jump in as well. So I think, you're absolutely right, Bob. Like it really is a really beloved brand, and it's a privilege to have that as a marketer. And I think it is such a beloved brand because it's something that's been crafted with a lot of intention over time. I mean, of course, the product, the cookie itself is delicious, but it is also the intent behind the brand and really connecting with consumers. And I think, that connection happening at such a deep level for people, purpose is kind of a really natural part of that. And when I think about purpose, our purpose-driven approach really is in everything that we do. So of course we have dedicated purpose-driven campaigns, but we really have those brand values lived throughout all experiences that touch the brand. So everything from who we choose to partner with, whether that be an influencer or a celebrity, all the way to who we represent in our paid media campaigns, down to the actual purpose-driven executions. We really do try to live those values. And I think the way that we've kind of approached that is by really having it embedded in our strategy as well. So if you kind of think about it, the way that we sort of see it is really all the way from the top, all the way down to the bottom, really integrating it into the strategy, starting with the history of the brand, as well as kind of what place we have in society, what benefit we're bringing to society. And for OREO specifically, we've kind of always been about bringing families together. It's a cookie that is inherently playful. I mean, everyone has their own way of eating an OREO, whether you twist it or lick it or dunk it or however you do that. Everyone has their own unique way of doing it. And that in essence is really playful in and of itself. So I think, that product truth is really rooted in our strategy, in our brand identity, our brand signature of Stay Playful. And so when thinking about that and thinking about what OREO means and its ability to bring people together and its really playful nature in our Stay Playful creative platform, it's all about, bringing that to life in a way that can mean something in the broader sense to society. So that sort of led us to a place of understanding what we can do to support and champion connections, particularly when those connections are in jeopardy of being lost. So that really led us to a lot of the really awesome work that we've been able to do as an ally to the LGBTQ plus community. And Olympia will speak to a lot of that later. But generally, I'd say that's how we've approached it, is really starting with the brand values, the brand purpose, the brand history, thinking about the strategy that we have for the brand overall and how that can then connect using purpose.
Yeah, no, exactly what Lauren said. I think the other thing that I would add to this is, it is such a privilege to work on such a well-established and beloved brand, over 100+ years of history. But as Lauren said, it really needs to start with what your brand is about. So that those playful connections, those are the two facets of the brand that we work on from an equity and a communication standpoint. And in some activations, maybe some of our more buzzy partnerships, we're activating a little bit more of the playful side of the brand, and then some of more purpose-driven and more serious work, we are focusing a little bit more on the connections. But ultimately, it all ladders back to that OREO brand purpose, really around filling the world with more playful moments that bring people together. So being very clear and pure and true to what the brand stands for and the role it plays in consumers' lives has been a really important part of this journey. But the other piece is, is also a more human side of things. So when we started on this sort of more purpose journey, which was over, I think, close to 3 years ago, the team working on the brand at the time went through a lot of different workshops. And where we ended up is exactly what Lauren said, strategically focusing on those moments where some of those connections, whether it's between parent and child or sibling and sibling, are a little bit more at risk. But it was also focusing on the topics the team had a lot of passion for. It really always starts with your brand, it starts with yourself, your people, your agencies, your partners. Ultimately, I think if you want to produce authentic and great work that's going to resonate and touch people, it really has to start from the people.
That's great. I love what you're saying about making connections and playful. Like, there's nothing better than, I noticed on your website that you can customize and order your own Oreos with uploaded images. Am I right? Like you can get really kooky with an Oreo order and customize it like a million different ways.
That customizable Oreo platform was something that I launched in partnership with our e-commerce team the back half of 2020, and it is consumers love different ways to eat Oreos. They have intimate relationships with these cookies, and now for the first time ever, you can have your Oreo your way, and it's been exciting and hugely successful.
Very creative. I love it. And very playful, just as you were saying. So currently, what are the most important things that you're working on, Olympia?
Yeah, so, both Lauren and I spent a lot of time, developing campaigns and activations and strategies that will activate Oreo's brand purpose. I've, over the past couple of years, spent a good amount of time focusing on Oreo's work in support of the LGBTQ community. So, just to give you a little bit of background, Oreo has really been an ally of that community for a number of years, from shows of support on social way back in the early 2010s to activating at World Pride with limited edition pronoun packs. We kind of went on this journey from smaller acts of support to a bigger ambition in 2020, which was really about showing our support to actually really making a difference. So in 2020, we partnered with PFLAG, which is the nation's oldest and largest LGBT advocacy organization, and they do really incredible work. They have chapters in all 50 states, and what they're really focused on is providing kind of peer support, education, and advocacy to LGBTQ people, their parents, their families, and allies. And in our journey towards supporting this community, finding our own ally in that space was really important. So our P-Flag partnership is a really, really important part of the foundation of our work with that community. And the reason why we chose P-Flag and we decided to focus on this specific topic is that for Gen Z in particular, LGBTQ rights is a really critical topic. And through our research with our consumer insights team and our nonprofit partners, the act of a parent coming out to show support is one of the biggest change agents for LGBTQ acceptance. And less than 25% of LGBTQ youth have family who's involved in the community. It can take many years for parents to become comfortable with their child's identity. And ultimately, that family acceptance is really, honestly, the #1 issue facing LGBTQ youth today. So going back to our brand purpose, focusing on moments of connection where that bond might be, in jeopardy or at risk, that's where we really wanted to focus our time. And through that partnership, we created the Proud Parent platform, which has been a multi-initiative campaign designed really to shine a spotlight on that really powerful impact that love and acceptance can have on LGBTQ youth.
Wow, that's great stuff. I mean, talk about living what you preach about, making connections. And I was looking at some of the videos. It's really heartwarming when you watch some of those videos. So great work. And do you want to talk about like some of the social media platforms you're using for some of those initiatives?
Yeah, absolutely. So the big campaign in the back half of last year, and I assume those are the videos that you're talking about, that really, like, that film gets me. I've seen it 100 times. It gets me every time. But so with social purpose, it also has a very smart mix of sort of paid, organic and earned media tactics kind of coming together. And I would say that for those types of initiatives, and particularly for the Proud Parent campaign, organic social was a really, really valuable part of that media ecosystem. So OREO has a really big social following, and we really use our own channels across Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok to express our playful brand personality. This is our sort of direct line of communication with our fans and with consumers, and this is where we express our personality, our playful equity, but also the things that we sort of believe in, and our social conscious. So the Proud Parent campaign, it had paid media component, it had a huge earned media component, but a lot of the content lived in organic and was designed for organic. We wanted to design something that was going to prompt engagement, that was going to prompt people to share it with their friends, with their family, to engage with the brand on the messages that we were putting out there in the world. And so ultimately, it was designing that content specific for that platform versus sort of syndicating across all the different channels to make sure that we were optimizing the content for the best possible success in the individual channels. Because the reason why someone might be on Instagram is not going to be necessarily the same reason why they're on Twitter. So we had different parts of the campaign that were designed to live in different areas of that media ecosystem, but all ultimately to drive sort of engagement and views and get that message out.
Lauren, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts. That's great stuff. Love to hear that. Definitely making connections on the social media platforms.
Yeah, I think Olympia really, hit the nail with the hammer, or whatever the expression is. But I definitely think, to her point, it is really just getting smart about which platforms you're going to. And I think we use that approach with really everything that we think about, even if we're thinking about like our paid media tactics. It really is so important to think platform first in terms of, what is the reason people are going? And with Twitter, it's news. They're looking for, a story. With TikTok, it's to be entertained. With, Instagram, it's to kind of look for these like beautiful images. So I think kind of having that approach as you think about purpose and what platforms you choose to lead with is definitely really key.
Yeah, that's very true. So the platform choice is driven by the consumer behavior. It's like, why are they going to Twitter? Why are they going to Instagram? And you can instantly make connections with thousands, if not millions of people. So it's amazing. The technology has allowed for that. So I'm curious, like in light of all these great efforts that you're making for some of these great causes, what are some of your brand health metrics? How do you measure what's the status of OREO today in the world, given all this good work you're doing? Like, so talk about some of the metrics you might be looking at.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So I think with purpose, there's specific things we're looking at. And I think with the brand in general and the brand's equity and long-term equity, there's kind of systems of measurement that we use. I think within purpose, it's really, you can kind of dimensionalize it across 4 things. I think first is impact, and that's probably the most important, is thinking about, you know, the reason that you're in it. And to Olympia's earlier point, not forgetting that very human part of purpose in leading with authenticity and leading with the intent to do something that's actually meaningful and impactful to the community that you're speaking to. So that's kind of the first place to really think about it, is what tangible good was I able to provide as a result of this work, whether that's raising awareness, whether that's X amount in donations, or if, you know, if you're in sustainability, it's reducing, you know, your emissions by X%. So really having that tangible impact. And then impressions and engagements, which I know Olympia will speak to in a bit as well, but just thinking about it, when you are looking at either those paid or organic sort of tactics, how many people were you able to reach? Was it compelling? Did people really engage with those topics? And then even within the engagement, like, engagement is great, but what was the sentiment within it? Was it mostly positive? Was it neutral? Was there a lot of negative commentary? Because not all engagement is good engagement, right? So I think if we're thinking about purpose, those are kind of some of the metrics and measurements. If we're thinking about generally like the brand equity and kind of the intersection of those 2 things, we do look at brand health trackers, which look at everything from brand love, which is actually really important for a brand like OREO. It also looks at awareness, for example, which, I mean, OREO has pretty much no issue with awareness. There's probably not a human that hasn't heard of it at this point. And so really for us, the focus is on enduring and growing brand love and relevance. And so if you think about doing that, purpose really does make a lot of sense for that space as well. And it's really thinking about making those deeper, longer term connections with people. And if we think about how you can kind of apply those ways of tracking with one another, it's dimensionalizing which groups have I spoken to with a purpose message, and how is that resonating? If I'm looking at a brand love score for OREO, for example, am I higher or lower with these groups? Are there groups that, you know, I haven't spoken to and I'm seeing that there's less connection there? Is that something that maybe we can explore? So yeah, I would dimensionalize it as those 2 things, like kind of having some purpose-driven KPIs, such as those 4 I mentioned. And then from an equity standpoint, using things like a brand health tracker and really being able to break apart which communities you're speaking to, and really tracking tangibly how you're moving the needle with some of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, so I just to chime in here, I think what Lauren said was spot on. And ultimately, you know, what I would want to build on what she just said is that it's all very intentional. You know, of course, there's a good amount of testing and learning, but we have, we do as much as possible to be very disciplined about having, you know, good strategy behind all these creative executions and communications. So in addition to sort of those brand health trackers and larger high level equity tracking KPIs, organic social KPIs are a big part of you know, understanding how we are resonating with consumers. Is our messaging coming across? Are they developing positive brand associations between OREO and whatever the message is or the cause that we're trying to activate or speak up against, or in favor of? So I would say that, you know, some of those KPIs remain the same across all of our media initiatives, but specifically for the Pride work, we've developed some, I would call this multi-tactic comm strategy around very simple objectives that we have sort of identified through all of our testing and learning and the different purpose-driven activations that we come out with as sort of the 3 things that need to come together to deliver authentic messaging. And the first one was really around triggering the heart, we call it. It's really around creating awareness and getting people to emotionally connect to the topic. That Proud Parent film, it's emotional. And having an emotional response from consumers, sometimes positive, sometimes negative, is an important part of our strategy. The second one is really around sort of informing the head, providing education and resources on how to be an ally. And each one of these, I would say, have specific KPIs against them on, you know, are we meeting our goals? And the third one is really around encouraging the action, providing some mechanism for people to model the change that we're trying to advocate for. So for Proud Parent and for the work with the LGBTQ community, it's always been around empowering families and allies to show their public support for their LGBTQ family members and loved ones. And so those are sort of the things that we're tracking is the KPIs underneath these comms tactics to see if our messaging is landing. And we work really closely with all of our partners to kind of track all of these things, and then continue to iterate as we go forward.
Yeah, so you have a brand that's over 100 years old, yet you're resonating in a very fresh way, especially around social causes with Gen Z. So that's a pretty good thing, right? So a lot of brands that are over 100 years old struggle with, how do I stay relevant and get new consumers? So I think you're doing good as the new cool, and it's helping your brand because you're finding a way to connect with all these younger consumers. And I'm just curious, like, are there any other tools that you use to find these younger consumers? Because Olympia, you mentioned organic social. I'm sure if you start tracking that and follow that, especially if they start talking about OREO, that's one way to find them. But I'd love to hear both your thoughts on how do you find these new relevant audiences?
I think what I would say is that everyone loves Oreos. Oreos are for everyone, and some of our activations speak to to slightly different audiences. On organic social, the majority of our followers on certain platforms are Gen Z, are younger. On other platforms, they're a little bit older, they're more millennials. But I think it's not just purpose, it's really how, from a consumer's perspective, they're not differentiating necessarily always between, oh, this is a more purpose activation and this is more of a paid media campaign. To them, it is Oreo communicating with them, showing up in the world. So some of our activations that are a little bit more buzzy and culturally embedded, whether we are partnering with Game of Thrones or Lady Gaga to bring really cool or fun limited editions into the world, dropping a collaboration with Supreme, those do skew younger. And then some of our purpose work is also very much targeted at Gen Z. I mean, this is, we're certainly well into the age where consumers expect more from brands. They expect them to be as socially conscious as they are. You gave really good facts up at the beginning of this session. But this is even more important for millennials and for Gen Z. I mean, these are the generations that are redefining societal norms and pushing the conversation forward. So it is a natural fit to communicate directly with Gen Z on some of these issues that they care most about. And ultimately, we're trying to foster that generational brand love. Everyone experiences and loves Oreo as children, and we want to make sure that we're building that relationship with the consumers all the way from when they first taste an Oreo to when they're giving Oreos to their own families later on in life.
Passed down from generation to generation. Lauren, I'd love to hear any of your thoughts.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Olympia said. I think, the way to reach Gen Z really is a full approach. And it is very true. Like, they're not distinguishing, this is a campaign that was for this tactic and for this initiative or for this objective. They just are, communicating with Oreo. And I think the more you have that kind of perception about it, I think it's just about creating content that's relevant, and that's really across everything. I think it's the partnerships that we do. So Olympia mentioned Lady Gaga. The partnership we had with her was amazing and huge, and it was really designed to reach a particular group of people, which was Gen Z, but also, again, speaking to aligning with values, it also really resonated with the LGBTQ plus community. And so, in thinking about it, it's really, how do we show up in the world in a way that is personal to people as well? So it's not even just relevant at large, but also relevant to individual into communities. And I think that's kind of the approach that the brand has taken, and it's been really successful. And I would just echo, to Olympia's point, I think purpose-driven marketing isn't necessarily new. Like, it's been something that's been a topic of conversation over probably a decade or so, but it's really how purpose-driven marketing is really showing up in the expectation for it. And I would give Gen Z a ton of credit for how much they've pushed that conversation forward. I mean, the generation is demanding so much, and it makes sense for the context in which they've grown up. And even speaking of the last 2 years, they're seeing a global pandemic and the way that it's impacting people differently depending on socioeconomic considerations. They're seeing, more conversations about racism, between the murder of George Floyd, between Stop Asian Hate. They're seeing climate change and they've really kind of been a part of it. It's been a part of their life since the very beginning. They're also super socially connected. They're the first generation that's always had social media. And so I'm thinking about how that shapes their psychology in terms of the way that they see the world, in terms of the expectations that they have, not just for brands, but for individuals, for governments, for any stakeholder in society. That expectation is to be a participant beyond yourself. And I think that's really pushed the conversation forward for purpose-driven marketing. I think it's why OREO is successful, because we've been relevant in culture, relevant to individual, and as a part of being relevant to individual, it is having something to say beyond the cookie itself, which is why our purpose strategy is so important in reaching the generation.
Relevancy, Lauren. I love that. That's such an important word with the work you guys are doing. So kind of just to extend what you were talking about, Lauren, with Gen Z bringing all these issues to the forefront, and you as a brand, you and Olympia trying to connect with these Gen Z folks. How do you decide which issue or trend to like latch onto and to like really align with? Because I mean, as you said, Lauren, the good news is they are very active, this generation. A lot of work to be done, right? So how do you choose which causes or which trends to actually latch onto?
Yeah, I would separate trends and causes a little, just because I think it's important to think about causes with an intent that feels authentic versus what feels trendy. In terms of trends, I would say leaning into where there's groups of community that there's a lot of affinity. So I think that's why Lady Gaga, Game of Thrones, a Supreme worked so well. It's because there's a really passionate community behind each of those three partnerships where people want to talk about it. People want to share this moment together. And there's something about when you can tap into that, what is the passion of a group of people, that it works well. So I would say, in thinking about trends, it's really thinking about communities and where there's passion and conversation. And thinking about causes, I think, there's really a couple of distinct ways to approach it. And I think the first is looking at the data, right? Like I think you can, there's surveys to show what are the top causes that Gen Z cares about. And you'll see sustainability, you'll see racial inequality, you'll see LGBTQ plus issues. And I think there's, the very data-driven approach of, okay, this is generally what this group of people is caring about. But then I think there's also in kind of evaluating this, what can I authentically speak to and what can I actually impact? And what does my team have values for? Where's their passion for? Where's our leadership? Where's their headspace? Is this something we can speak to as a brand? Is this something that we have the right team of people to be able to also speak to this issue? So I would say, it's kind of twofold in terms of what is the sentiment that it feels like people care about, what can the brand authentically do and speak to, and how does that line up with the team that is working on that brand as well?
Wow, I love what you said about data driven. I mean, I don't think most people in this industry think about applying the technology that's out there to mine the data to find out which causes are important, and you really want to make sure you're aligning with your consumers there. So Lauren, you talked about leadership. So can you talk about what is the role of leadership at Mondelez and some of these purpose-driven marketing efforts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really proud to say I think we've got a great leadership team that really does have passion for the purpose marketing space. And I think that is a personal leadership value and a personal value that a lot of our team does have. I would also say that there is, a lot of evidence to point to the fact that this is good for the world and it is good for the brand. I think, we have enough cases at this point to really be able to point to, if you want your brand to be strong and healthy over time, it really is thinking again about how Gen Z is pushing the narrative forward and how there is this expectation, almost as table stakes, that you're not just a brand, you're not just a product, but that you're doing something in the world that has some meaning. So I think, our leadership has really been really supportive of that and has seen the value in that. So I think from just a global perspective, there is support for it, there is push for it. And I think that is really felt throughout the organization. And I think that's a really important role in leadership in these sort of purpose conversations is it really has to be almost top down. It has to be that they have passion for it, they have belief in it, they champion it, they embed it in the culture. I think the other piece of leadership's role in it is also to be a bit of a gatekeeper, right? Like at the end of the day, you also want to protect your brand. You want to make sure that you're inserting your brand in a way that's helpful in society and that is healthy for the brand. So I think it's, leading with their hearts, leading, with their own values, their own passion, really championing the value and the business case of the work as well, but then also being gatekeepers of, just protecting the equity that we have built and making sure that as we're approaching these topics that we're doing it with integrity and doing it in a way that supports the health of the brand.
Olympia, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would add is I would just reiterate the importance of having a focus not just on your external facing communications, the brand activations, the stunts, the media, but also, that's just really one piece of the puzzle. So if your brand wants to speak up on topics of diversity and inclusion, wants to speak on topics of LGBTQ+ rights, it's really essential to make DE&I the North Star of the entire process, and that includes the internal stuff that doesn't necessarily reach consumers, but making sure that, and this has been a big part of the process in our work with the LGBTQ community, is ensuring that we have a lot of connectivity with our parent company, with Mondelēz, with leadership, with our corporate partners, whether it's corporate affairs, whether it's the Mondelēz Rainbow Council, having them as valuable consults and making sure there's a lot of connectivity to ensure that we as a brand are living internally the values that we're preaching. So I think Mondelēz has been a really excellent partner in this space and guiding the organization in this direction, and the brands have been able to champion the causes that they feel passionate about, whether it's OREO or Ritz or Sour Patch Kids or any of the other amazing brands that we have. There has been a lot of internal support from the top down to activate against purpose, and while continuing to make improvements on the internal side of things, so that we are internally modeling or we're walking the walk.
Wow, great answers from both of you. So I'm just curious, does Mondelēz establish a complete national or different budget outside of the brand P&L to help you with all these initiatives? I'm not sure how other manufacturers are doing this, but I am kind of curious, how are they budgeting against these initiatives?
Yeah, go ahead, Olympia.
No, I was going to say that, we do have a whole internal DE&I team that has a separate budget. They work on, Mondelēz corporate initiatives at the business unit level and also at the global level. That is separate from the brand activations. For all of the activations that OREO, executes on purpose, that comes from the brand P&L and the brand budget.
Right. And just to add to that, it's, going back to the earlier point that for us, it is a full strategy, right? Like it's not just purpose separate, it's purpose lived in the values of everything that we do as well. And so, naturally the way that we do the budget also lines up with that. So as we kind of think about the media budget for OREO, it's not necessarily saying it's a separate bucket here and a separate bucket here, but thinking about the totality of the budget and how we allocate and how we support everything at an appropriate level.
Great. Thank you for answering that. And speaking of other questions, we're starting to get there was a direct question that came in. How has the customer journey evolved in recent years? How have the changes in the customer journey impacted your approach to digital media?
It's an interesting question. Do you want to?
Yeah, so I think the customer journey, that's interesting. So I guess, Olympia, you can probably speak to some of the D2C pieces, and I can speak to some of the digital media tactics that we have. And definitely the landscape has changed in the way that we consume media and the way that we purchase brands and the way that we think about brands. I think from a digital space, it's obviously a huge part of our strategy. It's pretty much impossible to do marketing without a digital first kind of mindset, without really understanding social platforms and digital platforms as well. And I think for us, it's really just about, again, really thinking about platform first and who we're trying to reach, and does the content we're putting out there line up with the intended audience. So I would say generally that's kind of been our thinking, is just having a digital first mindset and really digging even deeper into digital, really being platform specific.
Yeah, I think Lauren said it perfectly. I think that, not specific to OREO, but more at a macro level, we are the importance of omni-channel marketing has never been more important. We're seeing it, in terms of the way the brands purchase media. We're seeing it in the way retailers are sort of accelerating their investment in online capabilities. We're seeing it in the way we do our shopper marketing. But it is that omni-channel focus, that digital social first mindset that is, an industry-wide shift that we're certainly a part of. The online shopper journey, it's complex. It's different than it used to be. There's many digital touch points across the whole funnel, from awareness all the way down to conversion. And so again, going back to sort of that marketing mix, it's really, we are optimizing the way we view and plan media activities across paid and organic, across those touch points, and making sure from a product standpoint, it's really a focus on mental and physical availability. So making sure that we have the right product assortment in the channels that people are shopping, whether it's in-store, whether it's click and collect, whether it's direct to consumer. That is all part of this sort of evolving media landscape that we're all very focused on.
Great. Love to hear all that. Hey, in the sake of time, there was a question that came in, so hopefully we can get this. How does OREO connect any purpose-driven efforts directly with college students?
Sorry, what is the question?
Oh, how does OREO connect any purpose-driven efforts directly with college students?
Yeah, I don't know that we've specifically, broken out college students as a different purpose message. I think, to the earlier point, it's really more so thinking about Gen Z and thinking about what's important to them. And that, of course, does overlap with who currently is in college. I don't think we've really thought about it as college student specific. Obviously, there's a ton of people in the population that are within Gen Z and that are not college students, whether they're of just a different age or chose a different path. So I think it's just generally thinking about Gen Z from kind of a holistic and inclusive perspective. And I think it naturally lends itself to some overlap with college students, but it hasn't necessarily been a focal point within that. And Olympia, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I think we're focusing more on that generation versus a specific subset of it. And again, focusing on sort of the topics, the topics that they care about, whether it's their interests or it's causes that they care about, and making sure that if we are sort of activating or speaking to them on those subjects, that we're doing so with with integrity and authenticity.
Right. So last other brand folks in the industry trying to do the same thing and drive purpose-driven marketing. What best practices or quick tips on how to make it work in their org? That's probably not a minute answer. That was my last question.
Olympia, do you want to go first?
I can take this one. I think I would go back to all of the things that we discussed today about understanding first and foremost what your brand stands for and what your brand is about. So making sure that there is connectivity between what you stand for in the world and the purpose or the cause that the brand is speaking out against is super important. The other thing is that I think it would be a mistake not to mention that our journey towards the purpose work that you're seeing out there in the world, it didn't happen overnight. It did take time for us to build that credibility in the space so that when we come with bigger initiatives, that it doesn't come out of left field for consumers. So it is a bit of an iterative long-term process. And consumers are really, really quicker than ever to call out brands and companies and retailers for what, substanceless virtue signaling. So there are, I think, leading with authenticity, making sure that when you are speaking out on purpose-based issues, that you're adding value to the conversation, whether it could be, working with a nonprofit to drive awareness, through donations, through visibility for LGBTQ individuals or whatever the group might be, making sure that it is that there is substance behind it, that you're doing something that's helpful and positive.
Great. Well, I think we're at the top of the hour. Lauren and Olympia, I don't think Mondelēz could have hand chosen two more articulate, eloquent experts on this very interesting topic. I thank you for very intelligent conversation. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and hope I get the chance to speak with you again.
Awesome. Thanks so much for moderating, Bob. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Totally agreed, Bob. Thank you so much, Lauren and Olympia, for that amazing discussion. I'm Claire Vandenberg from the Brand Innovators team. I loved learning about how OREO has integrated purpose into its historically playful brand message, especially your inspiring work with the LGBTQ+ community and Gen Z. And Bob, excellent job moderating. We'd love to have all of you back again sometime soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A good one. Hi, everyone. As I mentioned, my name is Claire Vandenberg, and I lead content and community here at Brand Innovators, and I'll be hosting the remainder of today's program. So up next, I'm thrilled to welcome a panel of incredible leaders from the American Influencer Council. We have Anna Tolosa Irving, Koa Wynn, Kiana Smith Brunetto, Marissa